One of the greatest liabilities for Joe Biden as he campaigned for the White House was his own son, Hunter. Donald Trump targeted Hunter Biden's drug and alcohol addictions, as well as his lucrative appointment to a Ukrainian energy company. Well, now Hunter Biden is speaking out. In an interview with the BBC, he has acknowledged that, though hard to believe in hindsight, he missed the perception that his job on the board of Burisma would create. He's been speaking to Michelle Hussein. Before that, though, let's take a closer look at his life so far.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
2020 and Hunter Biden's name resounded on the campaign trail. As the younger son of Joe Biden, he was part of the Democratic candidate's family man persona and inner circle. For the Trump campaign, his lobbying work and drug and alcohol addictions were a way to attack the man who is now president. Hunter Biden's early life was marred by tragedy. His father was sworn into the Senate at his hospital bedside following a car accident that killed his mother and baby sister in 1972. Then the other survivor of that crash, his brother Beau, who he described as his soulmate, died of a brain tumour in 2015. Soon after, his life spiralled downwards. His 2 decades-long marriage came to an end, and a crippling addiction to alcohol and crack cocaine saw him buying drugs on the streets of Washington, D.C., having guns pointed in his face, and at one point his dealer moved into his apartment. He credits his new wife, Melissa, with making it possible for him to get clean, and his father with never wavering in his support.
And he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him.
But it was his role on the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma that was used repeatedly by the Trump campaign against Joe Biden, highlighting what Hunter was being paid and what it was for. And now that his father holds the highest office in the country, what comes next for this man, who by his own admission is still heavily in debt?
That was Michelle Hussein setting out the background, but she's also been speaking to Hunter Biden, and he told her about his father's support in the dark days after his brother Beau's death.
He was there constantly. I mean, he literally showed up at my door. He got, he reduced his Secret Service detail. This is when he was vice president. He knocked on my door, and I was living by myself for the first time in 46 years. My brother had just died. I separated with my wife. I was in an apartment by myself, and I was basically drinking myself to death. It was awful. I mean, grief does funny things, and combine that with with addiction, and it is a really it's a really hard thing to overcome. And he knocked on the door and he said, "Hunter, are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine, Dad." And he said, "No, you're not. You need help." And I went and I actually, he saved me then. But he saved me so many times.
It is your work and your controversial business dealings that was very much used by the Trump campaign last year. Can you see why people look at the fact that the Ukrainian gas company Burisma took you onto their board for a reported $50,000 a month and think, well, they were obviously doing that because of your surname?
One of the things that is most frustrating is this idea that I've never had a job in my life, as the former guy says. I've never worked for my dad. I paid for my college. I worked my way through both college and law school. I was an executive at one of the largest banks in the country. And so when someone comes to me with work, it's my job to do the due diligence, which I did. And, what I missed, though, was the perception that I would create, what I missed in that period of time. And I know that it is hard to believe with 2020 hindsight how I could possibly have missed that. So
at the point you were working for Burisma, it was a lot of money to be paid for relatively few meetings a year. And at a point where, by your own admission, you were an alcoholic through a lot of that period. How much work were you actually doing for them?
Yeah, well, I did the work that was required of every board member. And I would also like you to remember is that what I was paid is the equivalent of what people are paid to serve on corporate boards. But I get it, Michelle. I really do. I mean, I understand the thing. But here's at the bottom line. Not one investigative body, not one legitimate journalist or group of journalists or newspaper or editor have come to the conclusion other than this. My dad did nothing wrong and that I did nothing illegal or wrong in doing so. But you're right. I created a perception, and a perception that was wielded against us in an incredibly wild and conspiratorial way.
Well, that was just some of Michelle Hussein's interview with Hunter Biden. Well,